To anybody who's actually listening, imposter syndrome is a tool of evil.
It is.
It is, because it's crippling, it's debilitating, and it makes you feel insignificant. My characters are as flawed as they can get, and they've all got their own hang-ups and hitches. And if you can make them relatable, then people are more likely to enjoy their company. It's like Hemingway saying, "Write drunk, get it sober." One-liner.
Yeah.
Tell yourself you can do it.
Hey.
Hello.
How are you doing tonight?
I am well. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.
Is my audio okay?
Yeah, your audio is great. Thank you for checking. All right. Well, thanks so much again for tuning in. Today is a special day for two reasons. One, because I get to interview you, and two, because I got the first episode out. So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and it's a steep learning curve as well. And I have some spicy questions for you. Not like
spicy.
Not like spicy. Like, wait, I have to be careful with the use of that word.
Hot seat questions.
Hot seat questions. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm in.
All right. Well, let's start first with an intro. Who are you?
My name is Jeremy Morang. I am a soft science fiction author.
A soft science fiction author?
Yeah.
Why soft?
Soft is, in my opinion, and maybe the opinions of others as well, soft is really relationship driven, character driven. And the science and the technology and all the things that are stereotypically involved in science fiction are put on the back burner. And you're really focused on plot, setting, character development. Hard science fiction is Dune, The Expanse, some of the, like Stargate SG-1 is hard sci-fi, and military sci-fi. So there's a difference between soft sci-fi and hard sci-fi, and I prefer the softer side because I really like playing with my characters.
Okay. So, speaking of which, that's because you like to play with your characters. You wrote Hatham. Am I wrong?
Yes, I wrote Hatham.
Yes. I'm glad you have it on hand because I ordered mine, but it hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah, Hatham's literally changed my life.
Yeah? Has it been your most successful book?
It's the newest book, so put that against the Surrender Game, and we're not quite there yet. But it's definitely popular among the people who dive into my work. So yeah, I'll say it's pretty successful so far.
Yeah, I see
it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I see in the chat that people are saying that it was against your will. And that was actually one of my questions. They kind of jumped the gun there, so I'm going to take the opportunity. I've heard you say that you didn't want to write Hatham. Why is that? I
had to leave a lot out. There was some scenes that I just couldn't do. Just impossible for me to do. I get them out and then I delete them because what you saw of their experience together is just a fraction of what they went through. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to write it, but because Marissa and Addie and a handful of others ganged up on me in my live streams and pretty much said, you have to write Gethar Willow's origin story. And it took 6 weeks and I got it all done. Yep.
That's really impressive. 6 weeks to write it, edit it, all that stuff?
It was so wanted by the readers that I didn't even have to pay for it to be published. They paid for the cover art, they paid for all the line and copy editing, the dev editing, the formatting, all of it. All I had to do was write it.
Wow, that's really impressive.
So, yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know what it is about, give us a little elevator pitch of it.
Hatham is the Gethar Willow origin story. And if you read the Surrender Game, you're introduced to Gethar Willow. And you're also, in a sense, introduced to Hatham, but it's Hatham in passing. You know, Tyrell says, when you see Hatham again, tell her I said hello. And Gethar replies back and says, Hatham says hello, Tyrell. You know what I mean? And then later on in the final act, some of that unfolds. So that relationship was what people asked me to write Hatham and to tell how Gethar came to be, who he is when you first meet him. But you can read them out of order. You know, some people are saying read Hatham first, then read the Surrender Game. Or read Hatham first and then Hatham sequel coming soon, then read the Surrender Game. And it all ties back together and it's just part of one big story. So the Gethar Hatham dynamic has definitely blossomed into its own thing. And I couldn't be more excited because it's the most fun I've ever had writing and storytelling.
So you did something that was really impressive, I think. You told us the ending in the first 2-3 pages of your book. Why did you do that?
People have told me that the opening prologue of the Surrender Game was the reason why they wanted to read it. There was something going on in the prologue that just made people want to keep going. I've found that technique in storytelling to be quite the hook. And the hook is what makes people want to keep going. So I'm trying to master the hook technique. And if that requires taking a little snippet out of the action sequence and putting it at the beginning, they want to know why these things are happening now. And I don't have to be spoilery, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's kind of worked out to my favor. And most of my stories are done that way now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And it kind of kept it as a reader, it stayed at the back of my mind, and I was nervous as I read throughout the whole thing. I didn't know that it was a recurring theme from your other story.
Yes.
It definitely worked.
I'll take nervous. Nervous is good.
The book
Tension.
Yes, I was like, I kept looking at the percentage in my Kindle, and I was like, but wait, I think the way that you opened the story with them kind of flirting and, I thought it was a really cool, I knew I was reading a book I was going to be interested in because the depiction of this relationship seemed very mature and adult and fun, and I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was just really well done. But it brings me to one of my fun questions.
All right.
So at the beginning, Gethar really doesn't get why she's so obsessed with this place. And it's like a recurring theme. He doesn't get it. He doesn't see it. But then at the end, it's like it hits him like a wave. He realizes and emphasizes that she was right, that this is the most beautiful place in all of space. Where did you get that? Is that something that you've experienced yourself, or where? Because I thought that was really powerful, and as I was reading it, I was like, wow, this is such a powerful moment. Where did you get that?
That's a really good question. I've created a setting in my universe that all the patrons, all the crew, all the staff, the visitors coming and going, they connect with that location for very specific reasons. And those reasons are very subjective and individualized. You know what I mean? Some may go there because it's easier to sell some contraband. Some may go there because it's a cheap refuel. Gethar goes there because he's made a covenant with the building. And the covenant is protect room 17 at all costs. This is where love exists. This is where I've made my vows. This is sacred ground, and it can't be violated. So by making that covenant, that location becomes extra special. You know what I mean? And he will defend that building with his unaliving breath. You know what I mean? And that plays out in future novels. But yeah, Truckstop One and Room 17, I call Truckstop One the center of the universe in my work. Room 17 is the center of the multiverse. It all revolves around that room. And that's how it became so special. But Gethar's connection to it, we're all dum-dums. You know what I mean? Gethar is a vanilla cinnamon roll when you first meet him. You know what I mean? And later on, he becomes, you know, a champion. But he had to face some trials to get there. So I think that through the evolution of those 5 days, he was able to understand more why people like this place so much. You know what I mean? And then when he's looking out the window and seeing the colors change and the mirages in the distance and all those colorful moments, it connects even more. And then he's got 4 days to himself to just wander the building all alone. So he becomes connected to it. And yeah, it becomes a driving point for a lot of characters.
Okay.
Especially him.
Yeah, no, definitely. After everything he went through, I can definitely imagine. Where do you get your inspiration for your characters, for your stories? Where does it all come from?
I like to say that I have a hyperactive imagination. And like when it comes to the Gethar character, make him super short. You know what I mean? That's unique to his species. You know what I mean? He's 3 feet tall. And other characters, they've always just kind of been there. You know, I'm a big fan of the 80s and 90s cop buddy movies, action adventures, unique characters. So I thought, how more diversified can you get with uniqueness by making this self-contained, isolated area? Then it becomes all about the character interactions. But like there's a main character, different species. You know, they're not all the same. And yeah, I had to be creative with it, but I needed my things to be unique. They had to be completely mine. So I may have sci-fi inspiration, but my characters are definitely mine.
Yeah,
they are certainly unique.
And I definitely got that when I started reading and had to like reread some of these descriptions. I really appreciated that they were nothing I've ever encountered before, because it's true. I found it refreshing, and I was going to ask you, you said you like body counts and adventures and all that stuff. Why settle on sci-fi in particular? Like why not fantasy?
We write what we know. And yes, I could deviate into fantasy. I know fantasy. I was raised on fantasy novels. I have tons of them behind me. But I was immersed in science fiction growing up. Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, and then it just kept going, and I just stayed locked inside that genre. And I had just reached a point where I said, I'm getting tired of escaping into other people's worlds. I want to create my own to escape into.
Yeah.
And so I just, just came to be.
We're all writing.
No regrets.
We're all writing the novels we wish we had, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said something in the form. So to get into the show, you have to fill a form, extensive little form, and you said something about about wanting to, what you wanted to achieve is to make people excited to give sci-fi a chance to meet new characters. So do you think that people are more hesitant to engage with new sci-fi IPs? Where did that concern, or I guess that goal, come from?
I think that, there are a lot of studies that show that science fiction is one of the hardest things to market and get out. It's statistically, it's one of the hardest things. So for me, I've been lucky because most, if not all, has been word of mouth. You know what I mean? I don't have to do I don't have an advertising budget or anything like that. It's just making videos, engaging with people, and word of mouth. And you get the right book into the right people's hands, and it can go. You know what I mean? But I just decided to stay in that genre because it's something that I know and something that I can enjoy immersing myself in. And it's my own little personal escape. But
so, do you think people are hesitant to engage with that?
I do.
Okay.
I do, because a lot of people have the idea that science fiction, you have to be an intellectual or cerebral, you know what I mean, to enjoy sci-fi. And that's just not necessarily true. I mean, it has a negative stigma on it. It's too tough to read, you know what I mean? But if it's a sci-fi fantasy-ish type of thing, and it's on the softer side where the characters are super relatable and everything is kind of easy, it can be just like any other genre, any other fantasy novel. You know, you can take Truckstop One and put it on Earth and have the same, exact same story. It's just mindset somewhere else. So yeah, I think there is some hesitation to try new sci-fi, and there's not a lot of us on TikTok.
Okay, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways. You know, I've noticed a lot of sci-fi authors walk away.
Huh.
You know what I mean? It's just way too much work, and well, you're stuck with me, so
No,
I'm not going anywhere.
It's true. I've been here now for 3 months. Yeah, going on to 3 months, and I think you're the only sci-fi author I've really engaged with. There's a lot of fantasy going around, a lot of urban fantasy, and some war stories here and there. But yeah, no, you make a good point. I guess I never caught on to that.
You just got to be creative and make it so that it stands out in its own way and it's easily relatable. You know, my characters are as flawed as they can get, you know, and they've all got their own hang-ups and hitches. And if you can make them relatable, then people are more likely to enjoy their company. So
is that your strength? Would you say that's your strength, your characters?
I put a lot of work into my characters. I can tell you what my characters had for breakfast this morning. You know what I mean? I know them very intimately. And I think that that's definitely helped because they seem a lot more real, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't want to create flat wooden characters. I wanted them to have some depth, and a lot of them, I feel like I pulled that off. So, yeah, I would say that would be a strength of sorts.
Is that the reason I asked this? Because you said that you have to find a way to stand out. So how do you stand out?
Marketing is always the most difficult part of doing anything in the indie world. Mm-hmm. So two of the biggest fears that most indie authors have, I mean, that I believe, is we don't want to get canceled. And we need to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And, you know, I scroll by a lot of videos that are just very repetitive, very, you know, just constant advertising. And I just feel the need to be outside of that box a little bit. So, you know, my videos are very diverse and, you know, they're not consistent. The algorithm doesn't know what to do with me. So I just hopefully grab a couple of readers in with everyone and keep pushing forward. You know, slow growth is growth.
Yeah, it's better than being stagnant, that's for sure. And so let's do a quick plug. Hatham by Jeremy Morang. Hey You, Amazon. Go get it. It's a great book. I read it and I enjoyed it.
Thank you
very much. So you say something a lot that I've noticed. I was studying up on you, looking at your past videos and stuff before tonight. And you say that all indie authors want is to get their books on the right people's hands. What do you mean by that? And how does one do that?
I've been lucky enough by word of mouth. You know, I never would have thought that after certain people read the Surrender Game, and then one person in particular got their hands on the Surrender Game, and now I got T-shirts about the Surrender Game. And you know, the Surrender Game has its own wax melt product line. You know what I mean? So people have taken this stuff and made, you know, brought it out of the pages. And sometimes, I mean, is it coincidental? Is it fate? Is it, you know, what is it? It gets into the right people's hands. When it gets into the right people's hands, they have tendencies to promote it on your behalf.
Yeah.
You know, and whether or not that comes through videos or just conversations and chat, you know, chat sections, every now and again, it just falls into the right people's hands. And I've been lucky enough to say that my book has fallen into the right people's hands because people are talking about my books. So I'm just trying to, you know, continue to stay relevant and put out as much content as I can. and write cool books. So from there, slow growth is growth. So eventually it just keeps falling like dominoes. And I don't, I haven't deviated much from that because it works.
Okay.
I mean, how you get your books into the right people's hands? Work, grind.
Did you get your fandom through TikTok?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When did you?
I published November 2020, and for 2 years I had 2 5-star reviews.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And then I was like, oh, what's this TikTok thing? Nothing's happening on Facebook. Nothing's happening on Instagram. All the other socials are petering out. So I just jumped on TikTok, and then I went live every single night for a year for no less than 3 hours.
Wow.
And during that time, I was able to share my journey and bring people up and read their books and the fun things. And through that process, people started buying my work. And now people actually collect the books, every edition, it's pretty humbling. It's a humbling experience.
That's really nice. Yeah, I can see in the chat some people attesting to that time. What made you believe in yourself in a time where it seemed like, other people would have given up? Why did you believe in yourself so much?
I was told on 2 different occasions that the thing that I wanted to do the most was impossible. My uncle asked me when I was 9 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, I want to write books. And he laughed me out of the room like it was a big joke. He's like, that's impossible. You can't, that's a hobby and blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
And then somebody in a previous relationship said the exact same thing. And I just said, well, maybe I shouldn't be pursuing this dream. Just people just keep trying to knock you down. And then when I committed to it, I haven't stopped. I write literally every single day, and I have for years. So it came out of nowhere. I just had that need, it filled a void, you know what I mean? And I was getting tired of escaping into other people's worlds,
Yeah, no, I totally get the feeling.
I quit watching TV, I quit playing video games, and I just immersed myself into this thing that had been stewing for years. So, yeah.
Nice. I want to go back to something you said earlier about what your characters had for breakfast. How do you, it seems like you're very enthralled and very aware of your characters, and you kind of keep developing them until they're real, right? How do you do that? What's your process to do that? If you were to explain it to a baby author, what would you say?
I mean, a lot of people write outlines, character sheets, those that is a technique, and a lot of people utilize it. Awesome. You know what I mean? My universe is overlaid over my actual vision.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if I'm standing in the grocery store, I'm seeing my characters interacting and walking around having conversations like they would on a normal day-to-day basis. It's like my own little weird version of virtual reality.
Love that.
If I'm sitting in the banking waiting area, my characters are intermingling and hanging out. The more you know them, the more they become real. And that's not like weird or anything like that. My videos have imaginary characters in them. So, I've incorporated with my imaginary universe into my real life, and it's just been a lot of fun. So we got to do the things that we enjoy, and writing is passion, but you got to make it fun. And being able to, that's kind of my process. I immerse myself into their world because, let's be honest, day-to-day job, all the errands, all the obligations, it becomes very routine after a while. And it's like, all right, this is something that I just utilize. And then I just sit down and put it on paper, how they interacted. I know that sounds a little strange, but
no, it doesn't. It's actually, it sounds kind of fun. I mean, I can just imagine being in the bank and replacing the teller with some crazy creature in your brain,
some alien bartender.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I think I personally think that's a great source of inspiration is, just living your life, and then you see some really nasty, salacious interaction at the bank, and you're like, I'm gonna use that.
Oh yeah. And these are the two characters. This is how it's going to go down, and this is the room it's going to be in. You know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's healthy. I don't think it's weird.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's the good thing about Booktok is we listen and we don't judge.
Yep, that's right.
Your dedication was very. So I've said this before. Actually, if you go to the episode that's just came out today, we have a whole section about dedications because the previous author, she had a page of dedications, and yours reads, for the manager, Gethar's biggest fan. And when I read it, I was like, okay, who's the manager? Who's Gethar? And what? Like, I like dedications because it tells me the headspace of the author. And yours gave nothing away because I had just come into the story. And I remember being so disappointed that I'm going to start this book and I know nothing about you, which I thought was devious. But explain it. Like, tell me what. Now I know what it is, right? But I want you to explain to me, did you write the dedication last or do you write it first? Like, what's the dynamic?
I wrote the dedication last on Hatham.
That makes sense.
Writing the Hatham story was Addie's brainchild. Addie, who's in our Discord, I don't think she's here tonight, but she over time adopted the name The Manager because we do a live show together, and she's always in charge. She's like our, the real world version of Hatham. You know what I mean? Addie's in charge, right? And she manages me. She's also my dev editor. You know what I mean? So she's fully immersed in the Guardian War Chronicles. She gets everything up front. She knows how the story's going to end. She's completely immersed in it so that she can, continue to put her DNA into my work, right? So she adopted the name The Manager because she's in charge, and she is a unrelenting Gethar super fan.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
kind of how that all played out.
So that's crazy because you told me the story now, and now I know the real story. But for the longest time, until this very second, I thought that what you meant by this is that at the end, when he makes the deal with the manager of Truckstop One, with the owner, I thought that's what you meant. Like that guy, because he has the most to gain from Gethar, being successful. So that's what you meant.
No, it's a good way to say art is subjective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so fun. That was really fun. I done that. It's multi-tiered, but yeah, that's what I thought you meant. So when I finished reading it, and today I was perusing and saw the dedication, and I was like, I know who the manager is, but no, I didn't know. Yep.
Addie likes to say she's in charge, and I just let it happen. So. All
right. I see. Oh wow, Marissa, I can't read Jared's work until Addie does. No, that makes sense. Now I know that she's the big dog here.
Yeah, and Marissa is one of my alpha and beta readers, so she'll read an alpha and then she'll read a beta after. So, wow. And yeah, Marissa's read Hatham 10 times.
Wow, that's a lot of crying. That's a lot of crying. Yeah, if you haven't read it and you're listening, you will cry in this book. And if you don't, I would go see a doctor. There's something wrong with you.
Thank you.
No, it was good. And I know I've told you this story before, but I think it bears saying again. When I was finishing Hatham, I was late for work. It was a snowy day. I ordered an Uber. I shared Uber, might I add. I don't know why I did that. I was in a hurry. It was the closest one. And I was finishing it, and the car was full of people. We were driving at a snail's pace, and I was sobbing in the middle of the back seat. And everyone was looking at me like they also regretted ordering an Uber shared. And I was the reason for it. So yeah, no, it was definitely emotional ending.
I did my best. That's our job. Evoke emotion.
Okay, so you know your characters, and your characters kind of have a mind of their own. Do you experience that while you're writing? Like you have a plan for your characters and your characters midway writing, they're like, no, we're going to do this instead.
Absolutely. My characters tell the story. They always have. I have a little bit of control over it, but if I have an idea and then I slip into where they are in their headspace, no, it's going to go this way. And definitely makes for interesting storytelling because everything is based on character choice.
Yeah. Do you have an example of how that happened in Hatham?
Yes. Not a lot of people know this, so this is like hot off the press, right?
Ooh.
Anybody who's read Hatham will remember the scene where they finally torch the hallway to make their escape.
Mm-hmm.
And Gethar is getting all disoriented and he's starting to tunnel out and he's feeling his stomach, start to lurch, and he grabs a hold of Markina to hold on to keep from falling over. Eventually, in the original manuscript, he passed out.
Okay.
Just out like a light. But in essence of the story and where the story was heading, the only thing that made sense was that was the moment where he felt Hatham for the first time. And Hatham righted him and said, no, you stop. Talking to the guy who was giving them crap, right? That wasn't my call. That was the Willow's call.
Okay.
Merging them into that moment. So from that point forward, Hatham had become a part of Gethar, but we don't hear her voice until the next chapter.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. Totally.
I know it's a little bit layered, but the characters just take over, and it was a great moment because it was like my version of Neo looking at the Agent Smiths and just going no, and holding up his hand, and all the bullets stop. You know what I mean? It was just one of those moments where I didn't have any say in the matter. Hatham made all the decisions.
Okay. No, cool.
It's like, he's not going to fall over. He has to be stronger than that.
Yeah. No, and that's really cool because some people that I've talked to say that they feel like they're not writing or that they're not the creator of their stories, that they're channeling stories. So how do you feel about that? Do you retain your control as a writer through and through, or do you feel like you're channeling something, je ne sais quoi, out of like this ether of ideas that you have?
Yeah, it's spilling the creativity into when the characters speak, you give them a place to talk, right? So my rough drafts, if you want to call them that, are mostly dialogue. So because all the information is fresh, and then I go back in and I work on more of the description areas.
Interesting.
But my characters speak to me, and I've got to give them a place to have their conversations. It's definitely I wouldn't call it channeling, you know what I mean, because that sounds so esoteric, you know what I mean, but in a way, you know what I mean. It's like Hemingway saying write drunk, get it sober. I just channel the dialogue and everything, free flow, and then go back in and tweak it and edit it and work it and rework it until I'm happy with it. But channeling, that works.
That works.
We'll do that.
I love asking authors what their process is. You kind of gave us a sneak peek, but I want to ask it again just to make sure that we didn't miss anything particularly exciting, because I feel like learning about other authors' process has been one of the most helpful things I've done to improve my writing. Because I'm not going to do exactly what you told me, because I don't do that, but I'm definitely going to take bits and chunks of things that I think might work for me and for obviously other writers.
Yeah. I like to coin the phrase process is process. There's no wrong way to do it. The only wrong way to do it is to not do it at all. You can't edit an empty page. Some people write numerous drafts, 4 or 5 drafts, before they even think about sending it off to anybody else. I edit as I go. There's no wrong way to do it. It's just a matter of what works for the individual. It's definitely it's probably the one thing that we can say is different about every single person who wants to be an indie author or who's actively writing. Everybody's process is different, and mine just happens to be this way. My, mine's fragmented because it's so layered and so dynamic. I'll write the first chapter first and the last chapter, and then I fill it all. Oh yeah. I get the first and last chapter out because they're the most important ones.
Yeah.
And then I put them, I like to coin what Silas Seabrook has said on numerous occasions. You put your characters into impossible situations and force yourself to work them out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can pull it off, you can do some really cool storytelling. And my stuff is very layered. So I have to be, I have to work out of order in order to really pull it all together. But yeah, it's tricky, but it's worth it. It's fun. I have a good time with it. It's a challenge.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're first at the bank, looking at your characters overlaid. Then you go home, you write your first chapter and your last chapter. Then you infill in between with dialogue. And then you come back, edit as you go, and add the descriptions. Did I get that right?
It's not all filled in the middle with just dialogue. You know what I mean? It's just once I hear a conversation or experience a conversation, I have to get it out because it's fluidic at that point. You know what I mean? You want to make your, all your dialogue transition well. And so once I hear these conversations or snippets and phrases, I have to get them out. And then it's like, then you go back and rework the descriptions and the setting and around it. And it works for me. You know what I mean? I'm trying to make it too overly complicated.
Yeah.
How
do you get it out? Do you have a notebook? Do you do it on your phone? Like, do you run home and say, I'm not going to do my next of my errands, I have writing to do?
Well, because they're always there and they're always existing. I don't listen to the radio in the car. I listen to people talking in my head. Mm-hmm. So how the conversations transpire, it kind of evolves, but I take care of all my errands, all my obligations, and then I get home, get comfortable, and write. And as of late, it's been better than it was a few months ago. I did have a little bit of a dry spell, but now it's all coming back and getting words out. So just continuing to tell the stories that I want to tell.
Yeah. Is that why you write? Why do you write? Why do you write?
I am a firm believer, that our brains and our hands are meant to create. And I believe that we're supposed to be manifesting our thoughts positively into reality. I also believe that absolutely everybody, regardless of skill level, grammar level, education, all have a story inside them. And they all want to get it out some way, somehow. Whether that's through art or music or sketching and clay, everybody wants to get their story out. And I also believe that a lot of us want to be remembered over time. And we also want to leave some kind of a legacy behind in some way. And all I want to do is tell my stories. That's all I want to do. My day job is repetitive. It's number crunching. It's data spreadsheets and quality spot checks and all those things. I'm always thinking about my work, future spin-off stories, alternate timelines. That permeates my brain because the job doesn't take care of that. Mm-hmm. Those needs that you want to get your story out on paper and you want to get it out in as many people's hands as possible and hope that they love it as much as you do. I think that's the goal of every indie author or creator.
Yeah. What is
tell the story?
So what is the theme? What does your story say? You want to tell the story. They're good stories. No one can deny that. But what is the why? What is the theme of your story? What are you trying? Is there something you're trying to teach? Or is it just you just want people to have fun in your world?
I don't think teaching is a thing. I've received numerous comments in private messages that some of my work has helped calm the ADHD brain.
Oh, that's lovely.
And that's not just one person. A handful of people have told me that. To know that, I was able to be fully immersed in something. Thank you. You know what I mean? That's a compliment that's just supersedes everything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've always told me, it was something I told both of my daughters. I said, if my work helps one person in some way, some shape, some form, that's it. That's all I need. You know, I don't do this for the money. You know what I mean? I do it because I'm hoping that maybe what I put on paper helps somebody in some weird way, whether it inspires them to want to write, or maybe they've had a story that they've been wanting. I'm going to take this guy down. I'm going to write a story better than him. Do it. You know what I mean? Just get your story out, be creative, use the things, you know what I mean? That's just the kind of mindset that I've just adopted over the years. I want to do these things, and I like being creative. I love having a hyperactive imagination.
It's a lot of fun.
You know, it is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun, and it is a lot of work, but I think it is rewarding. And that kind of segues perfectly to my next kind of set of answers that revolve around feedback. So you told me that you had a moment in your life where you only had two reviews for 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel as an author? And then now that you have more reviews, like just walk me through that whole journey, because I feel like a lot of indie authors, when they're starting out, that's what they're craving. They're craving feedback. And sometimes that can be so hard to get.
When you know that your book is in numerous people's hands, maybe even hundreds of people's hands, one of the hardest things to get is the feedback and or the reviews. The reviews are an author's bread and butter. You know what I mean? There's certain milestones that we all want to hit. But getting the reviews is a trickier process. So I went through a long period of time where I didn't have anything for reviews. And then once I got a readership and that number jumped, I kind of felt like I was on the right track. And then at that point, it's just a numbers game. You know what I mean? It's like the idea that if you send out 100 ARC reads, you might get 20 in return. You know what I mean? It's all based on a numbers game. I feel blessed at this point in the journey that my books are getting into the right people's hands, not just people who are adding it to a TBR pile that may get read someday, but the people who've actually dove into it and have enjoyed it to the point where they're looking forward to what's coming next. There's no greater feeling. You know what I mean? But it took 3 years to get there, 3.5 years to get there. So I'm still as baby as they get, right? I just have a lot more out than most baby authors. I came into Booktok with 3 books published. I didn't have a chance to share nothing. So I had to literally build it brick by brick by brick. And I'm just now getting to the point where when people see a Mighty Chain video in the comments, say, can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't, you know, that's everything to an indie author. It supersedes everything else. So I'm pretty excited for the future.
How did you get over yourself a little bit, right? Because I feel like after you had your 3 books out for 2 years and you have not, it's silence, it's radio silence. Like, I mean, so many people would think, you know what, forget it. It's over. How did you keep yourself motivated during that time? How did you take that motivation and then siphon it to TikTok, which clearly has worked out for you? And I feel like a lot of people agree with me that it's worked out for a lot of people. Like, walk me through the emotions. Like, how would you guide someone that's going through that before the light at the end of the tunnel?
To anybody who's actually listening, imposter syndrome is a tool of evil. It is, because it's crippling, it's debilitating, and it makes you feel insignificant, right? And one of the hardest things that we have to overcome and achieve is the imposter syndrome. If I knew then what I know now, I would have started so much sooner. Hindsight being all that. But that's my biggest regret in life, is not starting sooner, being terrified of the process, thinking that, oh, you know, you're not talking about a little fish in a big pond. You're talking about a drop of water in a vast ocean, right? But if it wasn't for each individual tiny drop, there wouldn't be a body of water. So your work does matter. It will fall into people's hands. It's just a matter of whether or not you want to do the work. And passion drives everything. Passion, I believe passion is the difference between existing and living. I want to be living. You know what I mean? So live. You know, if you got the story, write it. It can be fixed. It can be tweaked. It can be edited. You can't edit a blank page. It sounds so cliche, but it's so true.
No, but it's true.
50 words a day, you know, until it's done. You know, so imposter syndrome, make it go away, because you do matter. You are significant. It may not feel like it. You know, when I look at my stats on Amazon, number 5,000 out of 3 million.
That's
you know
crazy.
what I mean? So you see the numbers are huge. They're monumental numbers. But though it shouldn't matter if the passion is there. You know what I mean? If you think you're going to come into Booktok and make a crap ton of money out of the gate with one book published, and it might be a novella, you're deluding yourself. You know what I mean? Like you would say, it's a long game, and it's just a matter of whether or not you want to play the game. I want to play.
Mm-hmm. It is a long game, and I think. But do you think that sometimes? Let me rephrase this. So I'm training for a marathon right now, and the coach in my ear, right, always says, if you look at the 8 miles and you unravel it in front of you, you're not going to want to do the run. But if you say, I'm just going to run 1K and then 2K and 3K all the way up to 8 miles, then it's more palatable. Do you think that delusion is kind of a very powerful tool to get you going, or do you think it does more harm than good?
I think it does more harm than good. I believe that we should be setting realistic goals. You know what I mean? If you can set and achieve realistic goals, like you said, lay it all out incrementally, it's easier to navigate. You know, it doesn't seem like it's that much. You know, realistic goals is, okay, I want to attempt 300 words today using an arbitrary number. But at the end of the day, you only hit 250. Oh, I quit. I'm not achieving my goals. No, it was a realistic goal. You know what I mean? Next day, push a little harder. You know what I mean? And like, if somebody's dream and ambition and goals is to win a medal at the Olympics, they're going to be working every single day, getting the crap kicked out of them. Writing is no different. It's just different. You know what I mean? You got to do the work. You got to train. It seems daunting, but setting realistic expectations, realistic goals makes it more achievable. It's just, you got to know what your thresholds are, and you got to know how you can navigate that, so to speak. Yeah. I don't know if I answered the question or not, but I tried.
No, you did. You answered the question great. It's about kind of getting into those momentums of wins. You know, it's really hard to keep doing something if you feel like you're failing all the time. So if you set your expectations right, it'll feel like a lot of little wins, but they'll keep you going. You know, celebrate
every single win, every single one.
Agreed.
Whether it was, hey, I wrote 1,000 words this weekend, celebrate it.
Absolutely.
Have some pride in that, because
and I think that's something that I've heard. Every author, indie author that's been published that I've talked to always says the same thing. Celebrate all the little wins, reward yourself. Maybe it's chocolate, maybe it's, I don't know. What's your rewards? Do you reward yourself?
I work until my eyes can't stay open anymore.
Okay. So sleep is your reward.
If I'm laying down, I might play a little slide game on my phone for 10 minutes to decompress. And as long as I have some funny sitcom on in the background for white noise, I'm out like a light. And then I get up and I do it all over again.
Yeah.
I'm super motivated. Like I'm incredibly motivated. The Guardian War Chronicles needs to be written. And whether or not that takes 3 years or it happens over the course of the next 2 years, whatever, it just needs to be written, because I have an entire new story or an entire new series I need to take care of after that. So I'm extremely motivated.
So you're like, come on, let's go.
Let's do this. I'm ready to work.
Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, you're not at all.
So somebody told me once that it takes, 400,000 words to write 90,000 good ones. Do you feel like that's true?
Ooh, that's a loaded one. I guess it all depends on the caliber of the writing. Like the Surrender Game was originally 124,000 words. It was as far as I was concerned, that was thick, but it was edited down to 92. You know what I mean? So it all depends on how big the book is, I guess. I mean, I've never written anything that large, so I'm not really sure how the numbers all work. But
it's more, I think the spirit of it was like you sometimes, like if you read what you put out is like a product of so much more written that didn't, like you have to write a lot so you can get to the final beautiful thing that you put out to the world. I think was the spirit of the advice, regardless if it's if it's 400 to 40K or I don't think that's relevant. It's more about like, do you write a lot and then have to edit down, or do you kind of yes okay.
It's called unaliving your darlings. You're like, oh my god, I don't want to get rid of that chapter or that section it's so exquisitely written, but it's completely irrelevant to the story. You got to keep the story moving forward. All right, it's got to go. There's 1,000 words gone. Yeah, it happens big time.
Yeah. Do you save them somewhere and like?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Try to
I have
bring
a scrap folder.
Okay,
Yep.
That's cool. So we're kind of edging into something, right? This whole podcast is about indie authoring, right? And when I started my journey, I thought I wanted to traditionally publish, but upon meeting so many indie authors, I realized that that's not why traditional publish. But I feel like you could have had that option because your books are very well written, very well edited. Why did you choose indie authordom instead of traditional publishing?
I wanted to have complete control. I wanted my characters to be mine. I wanted my work to be my way. I didn't want to open up any doors for that to be altered in any way. I needed full and complete control. And I know that might sound a little, selfish, but no, my characters are unique to me. My words are unique to me. I didn't want that. I didn't want to deviate from that at all. I have never thought once about seeking the trad publishing route. Never once crossed my mind.
Oh, nope. Wow. Interesting.
I kind of like things the way they are. If anything big happens in the future, I mean, those are obviously bridges to cross, but in the here and now, no, it's never once even crossed my mind.
Okay. Would you be open to it if someone finds your book and wants to distribute it? Would you be open to it, or are you kind of like part of the creed and you don't want to?
There's definitely variables in there.
Okay.
How much is going to be changed? If anything, is my main character going to suddenly be a different main character? These are all those things. Liberty Bell is very unique and very important to me. You know what I mean? I don't want her to be messed with. I like her the way she is. If they could hold on to that, and we could have conversations. I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I also don't want to work under any restrictions. I don't want to have looming goals that have to be made. I'm very casual about how I do things.
Okay.
So like I said, lots of little bridges to cross, but no,
it's a big question that can't just simply be answered. But I'm always wondering how indie authors feel about their.
Money might talk. We'll see.
Money talks, but no, it's interesting that you never even considered it. I find that admirable that you are so, because another author I talked to, she wanted to indie publish because she wanted to make sure that she got the book on her grandmother's hand before she died. That's
absolutely.
But you're just all about control, and I think that's fascinating that that's so important to you, and I don't disagree with you. It's when you have a lot of characters and a lot of subjects that are hard, it's, you of course you want to keep it flow.
Well, there's also another side to it too. My readership or the people who are fully immersed they have a say and some control over how things happen, and that's been incorporated into the storylines. Whether it's naming something important or whatever. I like that. I like being able to do that. You know what I mean? I don't think I'd have those opportunities if I was working under someone,
Yeah.
regardless of, you know, people are talking about writing the satire story "Gethar Saves Christmas." You know what I mean? That's a legitimate thing. It can't be done until the entirety of the story is done. But
Oh, that sounds awesome.
I wouldn't be able to do that anywhere else other than here. You know what I mean? So
there's definitely a community aspect to it that you want to be able, like, you don't want some big stuffy editor to be like, no, you can't do Gethar Saves Christmas because it just doesn't go with our plan.
Yep. Okay. No, it's not going to happen.
All right. So first chapters, I think everyone agrees that the first chapter and the last chapter are the most important one. The first chapter because it's what hooks your readers, and the last chapter because you don't want to disappoint them after going through the journey. So talk to me about your first chapters. You made, and I have your book, and that's what I'm doing here. I have it on my iPad. So the first chapter is about them canceling their reservations and deciding to go to where Hatham, the leader of all, decides. But then you did something interesting and you gave us a perspective on Dr. Yamo. So I'm going to be honest, I found it a little jarring when I first read it. I was like, whoa, like it would give me a little bit of whiplash.
You're not the first one to have said that. Yep.
Okay. And not to say that Dr. Yamo was not an interesting character. And to be frank, I don't know if he appears in other further down, but I think he's a super cool character and I want to learn more. I felt so sympathetic for him when, it's not hard. It's not easy to deal with someone that's in a crisis like Gethar was, with the violence and the threats and the drama. And I really felt for his character, the way they did him dirty in his job. Why did you choose to introduce him so early? I feel like you could have done it almost at any point, really. Why at the beginning?
Because what was happening with Dr. Yamo coming into Truckstop One was the exact same time that Gethar and Hatham were like leaving their farm and heading there. Everything was kind of happening at the exact same time early on. And Dr. Yamo is in other books. Okay. He's just a lot more pronounced in this one. I needed to provide the leech bat. I needed to create the leech bat administration in order to tell the story later on. I figured the earlier the better. We were introducing characters, but however, you're not the first person to have mentioned that, and that's a tool that I'm using moving forward. You know what I mean? Those things won't happen as often because people don't like those types of chapters. You know what I mean? They throw you off a little bit. But at the same token, they, for the sake of the story, they were necessary. Yeah. So, Dr. Yemo is a big character. He's just not talked a lot about in other work. So I had to get him in somehow. Yeah. You know what I mean? So but that's where he ended up being. Yeah, no, and I think, I feel like everyone struggles with the first 4 to 5 chapters because how are you supposed to know what's going on if you don't talk about it? So I think it's hard because the first 4 chapters are ones that people scrutinize a lot, but they do a lot of the heavy lifting of making the rest of the work enjoyable. So it's kind of like a weird situation. A lot of people can gloss right over it and just keep going like it's not even a problem. They just want to read. But other people, are a little bit more apt to see those things for what they are. This book, I've always wondered, we had COVID and we had a pandemic that scarred our lives, right? That is a product of our time in this world. When they look back at our generations, they'll see, oh my God, they had a pandemic. And so I've always wondered, how does that influence media going forward? And we can see it. We start seeing breadcrumbs of it. Do you think COVID
and the pandemic influenced this work? Because I definitely thought it did while I was reading it, but I wanted to confirm.
Influenced Hatham?
Yeah.
No.
No?
The events didn't have anything to do with it. I was quarantining before quarantining was a thing. You know
Okay.
what I mean? My wife and I had to quarantine for 3 months.
Okay.
Long before, because she was so sick and her immune system was so destroyed that we couldn't allow anything coming into the house. It would have been terrifying. So I was quarantining before all that happened. Most of my storytelling happened during that time.
Okay.
While she was in healing and in recovery. I needed an outlet. You know, there was no TV, there was no noise. Sleep was the most important thing in the universe.
Gotcha.
So my character started talking and developing during that time period. And, you know, in the surrender game, quarantines are mentioned. And other, you know, quarantines are a thing in my work because it's forced proximity. And I think in a lot of ways, if it's done right, forced proximity can tell some really good stories.
Yeah.
So in regards to Hatham, it wasn't COVID related or pandemic related at all.
Okay.
It was a symptom of the story
Okay.
because that's how it all went down. You know what I mean? I couldn't deviate from the reality of that. I had to write it the way it was written.
Sure.
So, yeah.
But okay. But does it bother you that some people might make that correlation and
No.
not see it? Okay. Okay.
Art is subjective.
Yeah. Okay. No, great. Because I thought, I was like, wow. Okay. Either I'm way off or I'm straight in the point. I don't know.
It's purely coincidental.
Okay. No, that's cool. Okay.
I was writing quarantine situations because I'm familiar with them.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, you know, having food and resources delivered to your house, you know, but you can't interact with anybody. Just got to open the door, grab the stuff, and come inside. You know what I mean? And being like that for 2 or 3 months, yeah.
Makes an impression on you.
We write what we know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so funny that you say forced proximity, because I feel like that is such a big trope in, usually when people do that, when people speak of that, they're usually talking about romance novels or romantasy, and here you are using the same term in a new, fresh way that I haven't heard in, you know, that space is really loud. And so,
Right.
but that was cool. When you said that, I was like, wow, that's
Dare to be different, right?
yeah, no, you're using something that you're subverting expectations, and that's really cool, because it can be used as a tool, not just for like spicy situations, but also to drive plot and make situations awkward. And so that's a nice reminder that all tropes are created equal and should be used for all purposes.
Well said.
So what were your favorite scenes, or your favorite scene out of the whole book? Though maybe the how it turned out, or to write, I'll leave it to you to decide.
In Hatham, my favorite scene is probably the most emotional scene in the story, is when he wakes up and all the hoses and wires snap off him and he goes to the window. Then she appears beside him and they have that interaction. The chapter's called Spoken Vows. I still get choked up when I read it. And if I can evoke emotion on myself, I mean, I guess I'm doing okay. That scene was very difficult to write, and it was very raw and very necessary, because without that covenant, Gethar wouldn't be who he is. So that was probably my favorite scene to write.
Okay.
So that's my favorite chapter to write, because that's where the tears start. And then the very last couple of paragraphs, when Gethar says, where he says to Tyrell, and he's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and I'd really rather not go it alone, but I will if I have to. You know what I mean? That one specific moment. And then you get nothing, right?
Yes.
So the Mighty Chain picks up 14 years after that, or 24 years after that. Gethar is still fighting to keep the promise.
Okay. Okay.
Except now it took him 10 years to learn how to become strong enough based on his shortcomings to get into the military. You know what I mean? Once he was able to pass basic training, then he could go forward with his mission. And that was to avenge Hatham. Because that takes the Mighty Chain. The sequel takes place 24 years after Gethar says.
Wow.
24 years.
I thought 4. Okay, 24
with
years.
a 10-year missing time span. So after Hatham, there's 10 years, and then conflict happens for 14 years.
Wow. Okay.
So he's been involved in it for that long. Yep.
Wow. Talk about, speaking of long game.
Shadow Daddy.
Yeah, Shadow. That was a really fun TikTok. I watched it. Where you, when you declared him, Gethar, a Shadow Daddy. Please explain to the class why.
I didn't declare it. Everybody else did. I'm just riding the wave.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, if
Shadow, Shadow Daddy, burn the world
yeah,
for the one you love. You know what I mean? And their love is so powerful. It transcends time and space. And it's, Hatham is a real character. You know what I mean? She's just here. And the fact that he's deaf and it's the only thing that he can hear is her, just makes it even more of a powerful love story. You know
absolutely.
what I mean? And Shadow Daddy, he will destroy a galaxy to take care of business. Give him the opportunity. He went from vanilla cinnamon roll to a thief, a liar, an unaliver, a cold-blooded this and that, warlord, whatever it takes to protect Room 17. So anything that's threatened, that threat needs to be neutralized because he needs to see her as often as possible.
Yeah, that's proper Shadow Daddy behavior. Yeah.
I think that fits the bill. I hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, so what was the hardest moments in this whole journey of writing Hatham? The down, bad, low.
The stuff that I had to omit.
Okay.
I mean, there was some moments where it was just so overwhelming that even I couldn't do it. And I usually don't get caught up in that. You know what I mean? If it needs to happen for the story, it needs to happen for the story. But there were things that happened in Room 17 that I could not commit to. Other people were saying, and in fact, they don't even exist in my scraps. I tossed all of them out. Oh yeah, they're all gone.
What?
There's the one thing like I said, that was a tough book to write. Only because, I love them so much. Their story haunts me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, even when I go back and watch some of my old videos, there's over 114 videos under the Team Hatham hashtag now.
Wow.
Even when I go back and watch something, I still get a little choked up because they're powerful characters to me.
Yeah.
So to know that that's transitioned into other people saying the same thing, I gotta stick with what works. And I had to junk a whole bunch of stuff. It's a short story. It's only 144 pages.
Yeah.
And it was a lot bigger than that. But at that point, it was like shock value stuff. But the shock value truly existed in the real world, but I couldn't put it on paper.
I respect
I put it on paper, but then I had to dump it all. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, but I get that, and that's just a sign that you put a lot of yourself in your books, and that's exactly what people want out of their authors. We don't want you to do this formulaic decision. Sometimes it's hard, and sometimes, I always say, when it comes to trauma or when it comes to something difficult, if I'm okay enough to talk about it, then I'm over it. But if I can't talk about it, I'm not over it. And so that translates to writing. If you can't deal with it and have it out there and go through with it, that's just your form of healing, having control over that story and over that stuff. So
it took a lot of goading, or not a lot of goading. It took a lot of influence for me to finally commit to just writing the story, because I fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it. I'm glad I did, because like I said, it changed my life, but it took a lot of soul searching to get it down, because their story is pretty intense.
It is. And on that note, another shameless plug. If you're just got here, go get his book, Jeremy Morang. He wrote Hatham. It is the prequel to another 4 books. You've written 5 books total, right? And you should go get it right now. It's a KU, 141 pages of great storytelling, and you're gonna have a good time, I promise you. So
yeah, I have 7 books written, 5 published.
okay, 5 published, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I was like, I can't get this wrong. I checked your Amazon like 3 minutes before we got in here.
Yeah.
Okay, so on that note, right, on a little chirpier note, what is the most rewarding moment you've had as an author? Like, highlight, if you could frame it, you would.
I still come back to those personal messages. Being told, you know, even in a private setting, being told that your work has helped somebody, it's the sweetest icing on the proverbial cake. You know what I mean? If somebody says, you know, I finally was able to immerse myself in something, I was able to calm my brain. Yeah, those moments are everything, you know. So as far as rewarding goes, I think it's those little moments, those little wins that are, you know, more behind the curtain than anything.
Yeah.
I live for those moments. I'm just happy they're happening, you know, because it's completely unexpected.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought that I'd be able to fall in love with science fiction characters. You know, fall in love is a pretty heavy term.
Yeah,
and,
that's
I just, you know, I want to chase that feeling.
Is that what keeps you writing through and through? That those little moments of private, you know, I love your story, and made me laugh and made me cry. Is that the high you're chasing?
I mean, like we talked earlier, our job as authors is to evoke emotion, and I think that book writing and art is, you know, a form of magic. You know, because magic is such a powerful thing, and evoking emotion is so powerful, so that, you know, then it becomes art is magical. And I love that idea. And, you know, if our job is to evoke emotion and people are saying, I saw, you know, private messaging saying I sobbed like a baby in the back of an Uber, you know what I mean? To me, that was the greatest compliment I could have ever received. You know what I mean? Because that's what we want. We want to be remembered for those things. And, you know, just got to keep going and going and going and upping the ante.
Yeah. No, huh?
I said, I hope
Yeah,
to keep upping the ante.
Yeah, I mean, right, I feel like your first book, not yours in particular, but as a writer, your first book is always your worst, right? Just like your first episode is your worst. Everything that you do, you just go up from there, right? Would you say that writing is a talent or a skill?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have a little skill to write. You know, you need to know your basics, you need to know your sentence structures, you need to know how to, you know, in order to create good stories. But then the, you know, the talent of it is, you know, your voice, your tone, your stuff, put them all together. So yeah, I think a mix of a little bit of both.
Is it possible for you to be a bad writer and turn into a good writer?
I think so.
Okay.
If you're willing to put in all the work and you're willing to listen to the people who do know what they're talking about, and not me, you know, I rely on editors, you know, it's just the fact of the matter. But yeah, if you're, I think that maybe some people I've encountered along the way over time probably should have picked up a couple of books on how to write before they dove in, because now they have this entire mountain of work that could have been avoided. Now you're right back to square one again. You know, measure 3 times, cut once.
Yeah, true. True. What made you choose? Why do you write the POV that you choose? That's always an interesting question for me. Some people say it's just how it comes out, but you chose third person. And is that for all of your books? No. Okay.
This is the timeline. This is how it all went down.
Okay.
Volume 2 in the primary series, The Atlantis Paradox, was the first book I ever wrote.
Okay.
Okay. But then after I sent it off to a dev editor and got the line copy edits done, got the artwork for it, it was ready to publish. I thought to myself, something is missing. Readers might ask questions about this specific element or this specific reference. And I went, well, I can't do that, but I can't rewrite it.
Yeah.
So I sat down and wrote the Surrender Game, which essentially became the prequel to the series. I wrote the Surrender Game. It took 4 years to write it.
Wow.
And then it went through 2 different dev editors. And both of the dev editors told me that I would benefit if I rewrote the entire thing from third person to first.
Oh.
So the Surrender Game is written in first person, female POV. And then I went back, because I rewrote it in first person, I went back and I rewrote the Atlantis Paradox into first person to stay consistent. About 2/3 of the way through the Atlantis Paradox, it transitions gradually into third person.
Interesting.
So then I can tell the rest of the story in third until the end. So there's transitional periods, and it's pretty fluidic. Most people don't even realize it's happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yay, that worked. But the companion stories, the volume 1, 2, 3, and Hatham and the Mighty Chain, and anything else in the companion series are all in third.
Okay.
So components of my primary series are first person, and other components are third.
What do you prefer?
I got to be honest, I prefer writing first person.
Yeah.
But not all readers prefer first person. So there's a unique dichotomy there.
Yeah. I agree. I enjoy writing in first person. I try to write in third person, but it's really difficult for me. But why do you prefer to write in first person?
I think it just comes more natural. And, if it's more natural, that means it's easier.
Yeah.
So, but for some reason at the time when I first started developing it, I didn't even think about first person. I just, I had the story, I was seeing it from the cameras in the corners of the room and just making it happen. But when 2 different people who've never interacted with each other all say the same thing, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should change it over. And I'm glad I did. Okay. So a little extra work. It only took a year.
I mean, it's hard because I've had that experience before. Actually, the novel I'm currently almost finishing the first manuscript. I wrote half of it in third person and then changed it to first person. And now I'm thinking, should I do it in third person? It's a little.
Till it feels comfortable. Whatever feels natural.
Yeah, it's a little dance because obviously both have their own unique advantages and disadvantages. So I commend you. I'm interested now. I'm very intrigued to your transition of going from first person to third person. I want to experience that. So I have to.
Someday you'll get there.
Yeah, I have to keep delving into the series, and I will. I promise.
Oh, I get it. I get it more than anybody. I am the least. You'll never hear a word from me about it.
Yeah. Do you read? Do you read a lot?
I used to have a library of over 800 books, and then I lost them all due to mold damage. I lost almost all, the entire collection. I mean, we're talking first editions. I had all kinds of great stuff. But when I decided to start writing, I had realized that I needed to put aside some of the other things I really loved doing, like going to the movies, outside influences. I didn't want outside influences messing with my storyline, so I stopped reading. I'm a collector now more than anything, and I'm a big supporter. If you're part of the group or the community, I'm probably buying the book. But I don't necessarily have a lot of time to read, because if I invested my time in reading, I wouldn't be able to write.
Sure.
So if I hit a spot, I might pick up a book. But I'm also a mood reader, and I delve back into familiarity. So I might pick up an old Raymond Feist novel that I hadn't read in a long time, or Terry Goodkind, or not necessarily an indie, but things that I need for my brain.
Sure. Yeah, something to relax you. And how would you describe your writing style, your voice? Like, who do you sound like?
I don't know how to compare myself to another writer of any sort, but I've been told, and I think it's in one of my Amazon reviews, Orson Scott Card would be the closest relation to writing style. I don't know if there's any truth to it. It's been a long time since I read anything by Orson Scott Card, but he did Ender's Game and Ender's Game 2 and all, So I'm not sure exactly how to answer that because I don't.
Yeah.
I like to say that my writing, my storytelling is unique to me.
Yeah.
It's very frenetic. It's high action. The story always moves forward. Well, for the most part. But yeah, I don't know how to compare myself to somebody else. That's an interesting thing. I'll have to think about that.
One of the things that you did that I found the most interesting is that we never actually got to see Truckstop One. We lived through it with Hatham's memories. They alluded to it, but we never got to go party. We never partied, and I was looking so forward to it. Is there a book that I can go party at Truckstop One in?
All of the amenities of Truckstop One are known through all of the series.
Yeah.
So the answer to the question is yes.
Okay.
There's 4 rec rooms. There's huge casinos and taverns and eateries and lounge areas. It's a gigantic bed and breakfast.
I heard. So do we ever get like a party scene in there? Like a true cataclysmic hangover style party scene?
No, not at the moment. No. There is the character is named Booktok. He's a hawk that's considered the truck stop mascot, right? Okay. Booktok just wanders freely. He knows who he can hang out with and who he should avoid, but he's a hawk. Mm-hmm. And it's like the main character's bird. The hawk sits on her shoulder and they wander around the building together. Booktok has his own backstory.
Okay.
And the reason why he has an injured leg is because he got caught up in a bar brawl at Truckstop One during a big event. So we'll see if Booktok's backstory ever comes into play. Then you'll have your party.
Yes.
It's a big one.
Yes. I was so looking forward to a well-written party scene.
All right. I will do my best for you, Aid. I promise.
If you had one piece of advice, just the one piece for anyone that's a baby author or that's thinking about it or that's even entertaining it briefly in their head, what would you say?
Don't be afraid. Fear is the mind killer, according to Frank Hebert. And, that's something that fear is an emotion. We can control our emotions to a certain degree. Don't be afraid to want to do it. You got all these ideas rattling around and you want to do something with them. The only way to get it out is to do it. Don't be afraid to do it. Because if you instill that fear in yourself and you plant that seed and you're constantly watering it, you'll never do it.
Fair.
So
what's next? What are you working
next?
on? What do we have to? What are we expecting over here?
Hatham's sequel, The Mighty Chain, is already done. It's waiting. I'm waiting for final line copy edits for it. The second pass. The cover art is 95% complete, and it's dope.
Oh.
So the formatting is with the formatter, who is also the line copy editor. The cover art is just about done. I've already gotten some screenshots of it and the files for it. Once The Mighty Chain is published, I'm working on the next Gethar Hatham story, which is called Ambassador Willow. And that storyline takes place 8 months before the events of the Surrender Game. It's the final prequel story, if you want to call it that. But it also tells the bigger story. It's got its own universe. After that, I'm going back to the primary series, and I'm going to volume 3 in the primary series is with the dev editor. Volume 4, I've started writing, and after 4, there's going to be 5 and 6. After 5 and 6 are done, the Guardian War Chronicles is complete. Mm-hmm. And then I'll probably write the satire story Gethar Saves Christmas.
Yes.
After Gethar Saves Christmas, I will be 100% devoted to my YA fantasy series.
Okay. Whoa, YA. Wow, you just dropped that casually.
Book one. Book one is already written. So.
What? So,
Oh
okay,
yeah, I'm
hold
a
on.
machine.
How many books are you writing at one time? Here I was thinking I was a badass for reading 7 books at the same time, but you're writing like 7 books at the same time.
It's a discipline.
Oh, wow.
I've had the first book in the YA fantasy series done for a while, like a couple of years.
Okay.
I figured at some point I was going to transition into YA fantasy while still doing sci-fi, but I'll end up pew-pewing myself in the foot if I do that. You know what I mean? I just get the series done.
Yeah.
Don't make it convoluted. Focus on the other ones. Then maybe come back and do some more novella spin-offs. You know what I mean? Because those opportunities will always exist. So yeah, I have a YA fantasy series already started.
Okay. I have so many questions. 1, why YA? Why fantasy? Is this something that you've always wanted to do? Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, there's so many people excited for it. I can't even handle it. It's called Islands Keep.
Okay.
It's the Truman Show meets YA Dungeons and Dragons.
What? Okay. Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you were going. That threw me for a loop. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And YA, you just like you want to write for a younger audience?
I've spent the last 4 or 5 years writing adult science fiction. You know, I figured there's always the other side of me that I really love fantasy, and I don't really want to go the dark fantasy route. I like it to be playful and fun and imaginative and interactive and immersive. And the characters that came to mind to tell the story were young children. One's 11 and one's 13.
Oh.
And they have this adventure together, and it's very clean, very PG, as opposed to the Guardian War Chronicles, which is hard PG-13. You know what I mean? So I wanted to show something different that I've been involved in for a long time, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds super exciting, and I always love when authors go a different route completely to what they've been doing. It just shows that 1, you have range, and 2, well, you have a lot to say, it seems.
Tell stories. Let's do this.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, can you give us a little sneak peek of what it's about?
The Islands Keep?
Yeah.
I can. Islands Keep takes place in the year 2046. Okay. So not in the faraway future. A major corporation purchased an island in the South Pacific for medicinal research. And then they came to the conclusion that they could generate extra revenue if they used that land not only for like medical research, but to maybe possibly put together a reality TV game show. And they divided the island into 4 quadrants. Each quadrant has its own unique living conditions. 1,000 people signed up for the show, and they were divided. Well, millions of people signed up, but 1,000 were chosen, and they were 250 were put into each of their quadrants. And the only rule of the show is you have to adopt the character, become the characters that you signed up to become. And you can't talk to anybody on the island about the life you left behind.
Interesting.
You're part of this island. At the center of the island is the largest prize in all of TV reality show history. And each quadrant receives clues and challenges to find a way to access this thing at the center of the island. But little do they know that because they signed their life away to this corporation, they have no idea what's in store for them. But because they're now legal citizens of this new world, they change the rules of the game. And they decide not to do these specific challenges that may or may not put them in harm's way for a chance at winning money or hurting another player. So the rules are still intact. They're still watched 24 hours a day by millions of people from their couches, living this medieval fantasy type of world with four different regions that all have four different needs, cross-pollination and the whole thing. And over time, the clues to the puzzles and the scavenger hunt becomes mythology and lore, and the place where the money is stored is now a legend and nobody knows anything about it. And when a TV show runs for 300 years, you become fully acclimated to your environment. The generations have passed. You're not allowed to talk about the outside world. The libraries are limited. You know, everything is very medieval. So they exist within this Truman Show type medieval fantasy world. And when two young children, 300 years in the future, unravel one of the clues, the show is fired back up.
Oh.
So everything is set in the future around the island, but on the island they're living in this totally different environment. So technology is seen as magic, and you know, it becomes a Dungeons and Dragons type feel to it. The scavenger clues become, the challenges come back into play. Nobody knows, you know, but everybody's on the edge of their seat waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah.
And it becomes an episodic TV episode. It's been a lot of fun. I get to create puzzles and clues and scavenger hunts and put some poetry into it, and I just have been having a ball. So
that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. I didn't want to make a short story long, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. That's why I say it's Truman Show meets Dungeons and Dragons.
That's a perfect explanation. Now, I mean, I went into it, definitely rattles the cage and begs for elaboration. But now that I know, it makes sense. That's a great.
Yeah, they have no concept of anything outside the walls of the island.
Wow.
No
That's
concept.
Really cool.
Monsters exist beyond the horizon. You know what I mean? That type of, you know, and that's just the people who are monitoring the island to make sure nobody leaves. You know, those are the monsters. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Right. Shameless plug. Give us the download, where we can find you, your website, everything. Give me everything you got.
I'm not very active on my website, but it's my first and last name.com. There's old blog posts that are stored away in archives there, mostly just links to my work. All of my work is on KU for free, and everything is also available on Amazon. The companions are not available in hardcover, but everything else is hardcover and paperback, and everything's on ebook. Lowest possible prices. You know, I got it down as low as I possibly could. And I'm here on TikTok. I pretty much exist here, and our Discord. So that's where I can be found. People have been hesitant, I think, to dive into the Guardian War Chronicles, but I think that once they do, they'll be happy they're there.
Great. Okay, one last word before we leave and we close out this wonderful conversation that we've had. Give me one last piece of wisdom. Give me something.
One last piece of wisdom. Oh, man.
Or maybe a one-liner.
A one-liner?
Yeah.
Tell yourself you can do it. You know, everything is a mindset. Literally everything is a mindset. And if you fester in negative mindsets, you're just going to stay there. You know, we've talked about, you know, the celebrating all the small wins. So you can't have small wins unless you do it. Don't be afraid to do it. It's a lot of work and it seems daunting. But if you know ahead in advance that you're going into a long game, it makes navigating the game easier. Yeah, you're still going to have your hiccups, your bumps in the road. You're going to have those moments of, oh, why did I turn left instead of right? All of those things are learning experiences. I like to say that I have made literally every single mistake that you can make in the publishing world, other than joining with a hybrid or some kind of a vanity press. You know what I mean? I've never gone that route, but I've made all the mistakes. You will make mistakes along the way, but as long as you find people that you can work with and you connect to and you can relate with, developing your own little community, all of that just becomes so much easier. It's always about how much work you're willing to put in. And I'm a firm believer at this point, you know, I'll be 50 this year. And no, thank you. Is it work worth doing? And despite how hard it is, my answer is always going to be yes. You can't ever say that your work won't have meaning, because it will to somebody. Guaranteed. Guaranteed.
Well,
just got to do it.
I can't beat that. So on that note, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Doing
Absolutely, I had a ball.
Behind the scenes pep talks. And I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for letting me hang out on your show. It's great. Anytime.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go now and edit this bad boy and have it up there for everyone to watch. And again, thank you so much for all of your support.
You are welcome.
To you, Jeremy, and I can't wait to read all your books. So
I'll let you know.
Yes, let me know. Well, I'll be around.
I know you will. Good night, Aid.